Hey, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Josh Powers, and I've got a website that I hope you know about that is called The Field Grade Leader. Today we're here for a Leaders Livecast session, and this is the second in our series. And really, we're going to focus in on some information about the fundamentals of being a 3 or being an XO. But before we get into the topic, just a couple notes. So again, the forum is the Field Grade Leader, and I'd just like to highlight the fact that although we're broadcasting this out, and some of us that are in uniform, some of us aren't because we're on spring break here at Fort Leavenworth, what we present today does not represent the United States government, the Department of Defense, or the United States Army. This is a kind of a voluntary leadership forum, and the views that we express are our own here in the room. So the setup for this session, we're broadcasting out to you folks out there across the force. Additionally, we've got a couple of young leaders here in the room that are preparing to be Battalion S3s or XOs here in the not too distant future. And then lastly, I'd like to highlight a special guest that we have today, Lieutenant Colonel Drew Stedman. And we get dual purpose once again with Colonel Stedman. So not only is he coming after being a successful field grade officer out in a brigade combat team, but he is also attending the pre-command course here at Fort Leavenworth and getting ready to go out and get into battalion command. So, sir, thank you very much for coming. We
Absolutely, fired up to be here.
Hey, so the topic for today, what we really are here to talk about, is the first step towards managing a staff is managing yourself. So I distinctly remember my first day getting back into a battalion after being away for a while, and kind of that transition that I experienced very, very quickly, although I'd been a major for a little while, in regards to organizational leadership versus small unit leadership. And I remember being a company commander, and although I didn't go after every task with the same passion, and I didn't really put my heart in everything I did, if I put my mind to it, I could accomplish pretty much anything that my boss put in front of me. I could get it done. I'd get my PLs, and we could wrap our hands around anything. And making that transition to organizational leadership was huge, because now you simply can't handle the volume of tasks. There's too much information. There are too many things going on for you to handle individually. And it's really a large cognitive shift to getting back out there and being a field grade leader and an organizational leader. So I'm gonna quiet down for a little while, and I'm gonna pass it over to Colonel Stedman and then around to the group to discuss some of these topics. If you have questions and you're out there watching online, please put it down in the comments. If you like the content that we're putting out, hit the like button, let us know. And then if you're interested in participating in this forum and spreading the word, please share the link to this website, to this Facebook page as we go. So I'm going to pass it to Colonel Stedman. Sir, same question. Could you kind of describe your thoughts as to getting back into an organization as a field grade leader?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, glad to be here, and thanks guys for getting together. I feel like it's time well spent when we get to sit down and talk about the richness of the profession and kind of go beyond the 5-meter target of day-to-day tasks. In every unit I've been in, I've consistently felt like I've wanted to have those conversations more. So I encourage you to create this environment wherever you go, whatever unit you're in. And it's really easy. You sit down with a key question and spend 15 minutes talking about it, and you come out better for it. So thanks to you, Josh, for putting this together. Yeah, appreciate it. So day one, as an S3, 3rd Squadron, 3rd Cavalry Regiment, Fort Hood, as many majors are going into that job, overwhelmed. And it's okay. If you don't feel, honestly, we heard this from a senior leader this week, if you don't feel overwhelmed when you walk into every job, or don't feel like you don't have the tools to do the job, then you may not be in the right mindset for what you're about to do. We place a premium on experience here, and there's plenty of prep work you can do, but you never really arrive in a job. I'm kind of the belief that every day is leadership day 0, and so you can never really rest on what you've done before. You've got to earn it every day. And going in as an S3 into a squadron that was transitioning from the ACR to the Striker was no different. You know, you're putting these things into practice for the first time that you hear during CGSC, all these principles and mission command and MDMP, and it's all pretty overwhelming. But I'll tell you, it's partly overwhelming because there's no context to it, right? You know, you theorize. You get in the classroom and you theorize about MDMP, and you kind of say, well, when I'm at an S3, I think I'm going to be able to do this. When I talk to my battalion commander, I'm pretty sure I think I know how he's going to say things, and then I'll do X, Y, or Z. But you don't have any context on it, right? Like, you need experience, you need a couple reps under your belt to really get a sense of what it's like. And so it's okay to feel like you're walking into the gauntlet, going into field grade time. Totally fine and expected and encouraged, in fact. Because if you always feel like you're slightly behind a little bit, you'll keep striving for that next step, whatever it is. And that can continue throughout the course of your career. Do I right now feel like I am underprepared for battalion command? Absolutely. Definitely. I've got a whole page. I'm going to fill up this black notebook just in PCC of all the things I need to do and ideas that are connecting with the topics we're talking about as a learning tool and as a method to get there. So definitely overwhelmed. But that first day will be very nervous for everyone else that's on the staff because they don't know who they're getting. Right? They don't know who's walking in. Some of them have heard rumors, and there's a reputation that comes ahead of you. And you don't have to prove yourself day one, right? Like you're the S3, you're the XO, you've got the position, you've got the desk, right? You've got the authority that's given to you and the trust in the commander. You don't have to go out and prove to everyone how important you are or how good you are for the formation. Not just yet. Invest in those people, because who are the people typically in a unit who get flogged the most, right? It's the staff. You know, you're churning away, you're supporting the commander, you're getting yelled at from all sides, and it's you and PowerPoint, and sometimes it feels like that's just about it. So give your staff a little bit of love, whether it's a 3-shop or the staff primaries. You know, they're expecting he's going to come in and we're going to do a whole list of tasks and all this stuff. Take them on a team building thing, right? Like, do something chill. I mean, just get to know them a little bit to take the edge off of their feelings about the situation and yours, right? Because we can all relate to people. If you build some good trust right up front, I think it'll make your experience, you know, a little bit better. You know, so focus on the people. Ahead of taking over the job, you know, you should be doing your research about who you're going to work for, the unit, the lineage, the history, and all that stuff. But you should know more. You should do some deep dive about who you are. The prep work that I've been doing for Battalion Command, I kind of did a deep dive into, you know, the old concept of know yourself and seek self-improvement, right? And so I took that to heart. I did a whole battery of personality tests. And got the results back from that. I read several books to try to identify, you know, my learning styles, how I process information, the kind of decision maker I am, and so that I could explain to them who the heck they were dealing with. Right. So I have just gone through that, another round of that, and it may be helpful as a field grade to do that too. You know, you may, whether you process visually or you're kind of a talker, or maybe you know, you need a little information, maybe you need a lot of detail, whatever that is. But you got to figure that out so you can let them know. Because we've all been on staff, and there are plenty of people watching that can hit like on this if this has been your experience. But we've all been there where you sit there and you churn on a product, and the boss comes in, he's like, "That's not what I'm looking for." And you're like, "Darn it! I really wish you would have told me what you're looking for before you started me off on this task." We've all been there, and it's painful, right? So before you can be able to tell them exactly what you're looking for, you got to know yourself. You got to figure and tell them. Like, hey man, I don't need all the details. Just give me the highlights, and then I'll deep dive into what I want to figure out. Okay, sir, that's great. Here we go. And here's the other reason you have to know yourself, because you are going you're going to take the commander's unrefined intent and process that into tangible, actionable output. Right, so you've got this ball of mush. I mean, as a company commander, you got an op order, and you got pretty clear guidance, I hope, and you should. But as a 3 or an XO, it could just be the command group sitting around batting an idea around the boss's office, and you got to figure out, take that ball of mush, put it through a filter, and put it out to the staff so they can create a product for the rest of the unit. Well, that filter is you. That filter is your ideas, your ability to translate abstract into clear concepts, and use precision to define what the boss is thinking. So the more that you can understand how you do that, the better product will come out on the other end, if that makes any sense for you guys.
Definitely so, and I just want to thread a couple of these points together that I just think are absolutely key. And the first one is that you highlighted, sir, is know yourself, and know how you receive information and know how you think. You know, one of the things, and the folks out there that read any of my work know about me, and that I know about myself, is I can't write well, and I do very poorly with grammar. That's one of the things that I know about myself, and that I know that I need to have people that are on my team that can fill that in. I'm great at drawing on a whiteboard and putting concepts together, perhaps, but that's one of the things that's a personal weakness. And I'll transition that into another key point that you highlighted there, sir, is that nervousness that comes going into one of these jobs, because you don't know everything. You don't have all of the information. You're not good at grammar, whatever. You can't make good PowerPoint slides. Let me tell you a secret, and Colonel Stedman highlighted this. He's highly successful. He's getting ready to be a battalion commander. Doesn't have all the answers. I think that I was mildly successful in some of the jobs that I've had, really due to the team. I clearly don't have all the answers. No one has all the answers. So that nervousness comes with any of us going into one of these jobs. The right way to deal with it is to look, to learn, to figure out what your subordinates and your peers and what your team are good at. The wrong way to deal with it is to say, hey, we're doing it this way and that's the only way, and kind of putting your ego in front of doing things well and being a good organizational leader.
Let me jump on that for a second, because you mentioned doing it this way and this is the only way. We've all received directed courses of action, right, from the commander. He comes in and we don't have time to fool around. This is the way we're doing it. It may be helpful for you as a 3RXO to identify the gears, visualize the gears that you will need you and your team to operate on. There's a steady state function where you just kind of hum along, garrison ops day to day, and you're just getting things done. The daily task order's going out, the op order's going out. We got this ceremony, we did a rehearsal for it. We're just churning. So-and-so's going to the range, and we're just doing things. There's another lane where you need to leverage what I like to think about as creativity, or the intellectual capital of the organization. But you throttle back out of the churn mode and you get them into almost a design methodology, or maybe where you can, it's a weird problem and you need to leverage all those folks. So maybe you bring everybody in and figure it out. You whiteboard some stuff, and you come up with new processes, or you have to do a review of either doctrine or SOPs or what have you. And that's a whole different gear. You got to get people out of the computer and get them thinking, right? Because honestly, you can be on a staff and not think for weeks, and like your own creative thoughts. You're just getting the next thing going. So there's like steady state, there's leverage intellectual capital, and then there's this we're on the slopes of Iwo Jima kind of deal, right? It's like, we don't have time to screw around. Directed course of action. You do X product, you do Y product, you do Z. I want to look exactly like this. Go, no screwing around. And that's like high gear. Now the problem is, a lot of us, a lot of field grades get into the mode of going high gear all the time, right? They're just putting the pedal down on the staff, going and going and going. And the 3 or the XO don't recognize it. Similarly, the commander doesn't give them the leeway to come off the gas at all, because that's a commander's responsibility is to judge the organization, right? But the 3 of the XO has got to understand how those dynamics are working. So maybe if you can visualize the pace of operations and recognize what lane you're in or what gear you're in, that might it might help your team out a little bit,
Definitely so. All right, fellas, questions. What do you guys have?
Sir, when you took over as let's say, Battalion S3, or even a Battalion XO, what things did you do to prepare to lead subordinates who came from career fields that you weren't familiar with?
That's a good question. We had a lot of armor guys in the formation, a lot, because it was an ACR, and so in fact we were mostly armor when I came in. God bless him, the sergeant major was armor, and he was ready to do his top tank methodology on the Stryker battalion, and so we had there was there was butting of heads and gnashing of teeth to figure out exactly what the role of the organization was going to be. I looked at it as a staff officer as an MOS in itself, right? So as a baseline skill set that you have to do. And so me, the good staff officer, can leverage the knowledge networks, the digital networks, can run PowerPoint. Honestly, so there was a whole battery of education and training that I worked with some of the staff members who weren't quite there yet, right? We had some guys who were locked on and who had experience, and then some we needed to kind of to help out, right? So, but I kind of looked at it as a common set of staff capabilities, because we all worked in the same problem sets. But there's a if you can imagine a line of like optimal functionality in your staff, and the line of knowledge skill sets that's going to get you there, you've got to close the gap, right? So if the more you can teach and build efficiencies into the staff, the better off they'll be later. The quicker they'll be able to perform functions. Like if you walk in and your AS3 is not doing keyboard shortcuts, Control C, Control V, Control D, like Shift Tab. If that's Greek, you need to stop and get them oriented, right? Like if you don't know how to build animations in PowerPoint and like align objects to make sure they're all straight, like it's geeky stuff. But when you're on staff, you get to be the geek, right? It's not the cool guy moment, So, but you've got to get those competencies up so that line kind of matches with your optimal performance level, and you'll have to teach it. Like you just will. If they can't do formulas in Excel and you can't freeze a column so you can look at data as it slides there, that's stuff they got to know. And so I looked at that as a common base of staff competencies that we had to teach everybody. And so I really didn't discriminate by MOS. They all kind of got the same love.
Only highlight that I'll give you is to look at the things that are going to be important for your boss, and those are really the places if you're thinking through where to apply like your brain power, is maybe look at those things first. If you're an XO and you're not speaking USR fluently, like that may not be the best thing. The same thing if you're an XO and you are not fluent in how your maintenance works and your combat slant and your services, like those are probably some areas that you may want to dive in on, and that's getting in with the boss and getting into those pieces as you go. So I got a question from out in the world. This one is from Steve, who's actually here at Leavenworth, but
right.
popped it in separately. So he'd like you to elaborate a little bit about the concept of delegate versus do, and that tension between being a doer and being kind of an organizational leader.
Right. Well, what are the conditions that you need to be able to delegate to somebody? What do you have to have? If you're superior, boss looking at subordinate, what do you need to be able to get that task away? Trust. Yeah, absolutely.
Competency.
Yeah. You got to know they can do the job, right? And that they're willing to do the job, really. And that trust comes down. The Covey definition is competence and character. Those two things kind of build together to form trust. And Michael Hyatt has a good, if you search delegation on his website, he'll lay out different levels of delegation. So if if the example he gave was telling the secretary, hey, I want to travel to Los Angeles next weekend. So you don't just say, hey, schedule me a trip. You kind of walk through the expectations ahead of time. Well, so level 1 delegation is, all right, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to do it, and you're going to watch. Teach them like that. And level 2 would be, hey, I'm going to watch you do it and make sure all the steps are right. Level 3 would be, okay, I'm going to give you my intent, and you're going to go off and do it. Before you hit send, come back and back brief me, and then show me what the trip plan is, make sure the timing's right and everything. And then level 4 is like, go off and do it, and then come back to me. And then level 5 ultimately is, you do it, you come back and say, sir, this is what I did. Your schedule's, your trip schedule. So you have different levels of delegation based on the trust. That could be different for different people. And micromanagement is it's a curse word, right? We really don't like to think. Everyone tries to stay away from micromanagement. Well, micromanagement's okay. Call it whatever you want, but diving into the details when you need to, when it's a high intense operation, when there's short time available and there's only one way to do it. When a team member is new and maybe just getting on board with the standards, their confidence may not be up as high as the other folks, that's when you need to dive in and just watch over their shoulder and make sure they're doing things right. And then the tough part is throttling back once they do have that confidence and that competence, and once the trust really is there. I mean, if that's the problem, is that we think that our way is the only way to do it, and the problem that the key shift is it's a mindset shift. And there was, and I wrote about this on the site, but there's a key mindset shift that a colonel in Spain helped me remember. He's an Air Force colonel, and he told me that when you look at your formation, if you and the activities, and if you feel like you feel uncomfortable with it being out of control, like you have to know what's going on, and you have to in place measures to make sure that the activity is exactly how you would do it. He said that's unhealthy for you and for everybody else. He said what you need to do is flip it around, not look at that as a control environment, but as a growth environment. When you take the view off of you and you look down at the formation and say this is an opportunity for them to figure it out and for me to help them do it, it changes the entire paradigm. And so you're happy to give them tasks, and if you need to help them through that task, then fine. But it's not a fulfillment of your task, it's an experience for them, and you're walking them through it. So once you switch that around, now everything is open, right? You're just looking for growth opportunities. Your worst day at NTC is a growth opportunity for you and for everybody in the formation. So it's a mindset thing. But if you look at it as growth, then you won't be as tempted to keep your hands on the reins and still control everything. Like I heard what's the proverb? You don't plant a rose, the seed for a rose, and then dig it up 10 minutes later to see if it's growing, right? So you wait, you give it, and just let it brew, and let it grow and get the water in there, and then it comes up later. So don't go back and keep checking to see how everything's going. Just let it go, give clear intent, and then it'll grow. So it's a mindset. That's how I see it.
I was always amazed, especially in Battalion S3. You get some significantly younger, very junior officers in, and you're starting to build that trust with those individuals. And I remember being overwhelmed as a 3, and you give somebody a project, you're like, man, you just got to figure this one out. Yeah. And watching those guys come back with results, and you're like, that is truly impressive. You're doing better work when I get out of your way,
right,
than you would be if I was here, trying to corral you into the right direction.
Yeah. And what does it say about a leader who has to be the one in control, who has to be the one that's personally directing, every person? What does it say about it? I mean, to me, it says that person has more answers and more intellectual capital than everyone in that room combined. That's basically what you're saying. I'm smarter than all of you, and none of you can do better than me. And we know collectively, we know that's not the case, right? Because your experience, neither your experience nor your intellect has gotten you to the point where you can answer every question and you can do everything perfectly, or even do all the work, because you can't do all the work. Yeah.
All right, more questions, fellas. What do you got?
Sort of this may be a bit anecdotal, but when you first transitioned from company grade to field grade and got into your first job as an S3, are there any specific pitfalls you hit, and then you realize, well, hey, I'm doing this wrong, I'm wasting my time here, or just any things you specific, that were key aha moments for you, like, oh my gosh, I'm a major now, and I need to do this, so I can focus my time a little bit differently.
Two things. We'll get into the time management thing here in a second, because that's always painful. That's a constant fight. But the first thing was not owning the calendar, the ops calendar, training calendar, whatever, however your unit's got it. And I recommend just having one sync calendar and putting as many things on there as you can. And in the battalion, you have an ops calendar that's got everything on it, and you've got like the command group calendar, and that's kind of the bosses, But you don't want multiple tabs, multiple files, multiple places things you're going to. Pick one system and go with it. Excel's probably still the best way to go. I think we all collectively hate DTMS. Again, not official government position, but even the CAC commander says that DTMS has got some work still left to doing it. But pick an Excel, put all of your events down to FRG and all the ammo stuff and all the higher events. Put it all on there so you can see everything. But I didn't own that initially, and it took my squadron commander one, two, or several times to tell me that I really needed to own it. Like it sits on my desktop. I mean, you know, but I'm the only one that can change it. Because when you move the event, that's when you feel the impacts. You know, when you physically take the cursor and slide an event over or delete it or add one, you're able to conceptualize the up and down impacts and across the formation better than you can if your AS3 does it. And so, hey, sir, updated the calendar. And you're like, all right, cool. And you get back to whatever you were doing. And so whether that means taking a look at op orders, taskings, changes during the day, and there's a running list that your AS3 says, hey, sir, these are recommended changes to the calendar, then you get back to it and you say, all right, boom, 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 and then you enter them in at the end of the day or the beginning of the next day or whatever. However that system works, I recommend you own the calendar. And then secondly, figuring out how to tell your boss, how to communicate the level of engagement and the prioritization and the level of work that's going on. You know, we got to a point where we had a lot of priorities going. We were just doing a lot of things, and the boss wanted to do another event, but it wasn't a priority. He wanted to do kind of like a team building event, but it wasn't really like a critical team building event. And so he's like, I don't know why we can't get this, you know, scheduled. I kind of want to do it. I'm like, hey, sir, here's what. So I use the Covey method. You guys have probably seen it because it's getting around a good bit. It's the important and urgent quad chart. You know, there are four quadrants. Is it important? Yes or no. Is it urgent? Yes or no. And so the ones that occupy our time typically are the ones that are urgent and important. But where you want to spend your time is in the tasks that are not urgent but important. That's where you want to be, is in quadrant 2. And you can go and you can Google you know, Covey's kind of you know, task management matrix there. But I took all of our events that we were doing and I put them in those quadrants. And I was like, sir, warfighter, urgent, important. You know, CalFex planning, urgent, important. You know, because it's like 2 weeks from now, kind of thing. And then over here, I put some other stuff, and then down in a not important, not urgent was like his MWR, you know, like his thing he wanted to do. And I was like, sure, this is how I see it. Compared to these other things, this is where I see it. This is why this is not getting scheduled. And he was like, oh, okay. All right, I got you now. You know, he was able to lay it out for him, and he could really see it. But it took me a while to figure out how to communicate that. You know, because commanders, I mean, you put the rank on and you get to have good ideas all the time, right? Sergeants major have that built into them. They get to do it too. But when you're a commander, you get to like come up with some good stuff and just say, hey, 3XO, do this. And there is that potential energy there. So, and the boss needs to be told that sometimes the best ideas need to take a table for a little while. You know.
So I'm going to highlight just one thing that Colonel Stedman brought up. So earlier when he was talking about the calendar, and he was talking about when you come back in, the AS3 has these 5 things that go on the calendar, and he said something to the effect of, that's how that system works, right? Or however that system works. So one of the key like mental shifts for me was about systems thinking. So it's not thinking about like, man, every time I look at the calendar's messed up. Like that's, if you're looking at a problem when it comes in front of you, then you turn into a firefighter, and whatever comes up in front of you, you're like, I'm solving this problem. And I have a mentality that if you see the same problem happen twice, sometimes, but certainly 3 times, it's not about the thing that's coming up in front of you. There's a problem with a system somewhere, right?
Yeah, true.
So whatever you're doing, if you're thinking in systems, you know, hey, AS3, this is how we're going to work the calendar. I'm going to update the calendar. You give those to me so that I can build that into my memory, you know, the calendar. Another great one is Fragos. Hey, if it's a short suspense task that's in this window, then it comes to me for approval. If it's inside of another window, then it goes to the battalion commander for approval, and you always do it the same way. Then you're managing systems rather than fighting fires. It doesn't mean your life is going to be easier. That like close fight never goes away. Like it's always kind of the same, but it makes your organization more effective, and it makes you a better organizational leader. If that makes sense. So I'm gonna spin back around to you because you brought it up. Time management. So firefighting, you know, all day long, your emails going off. the boss is calling you, the Brigade 3 is calling you, you're getting a call from division that somebody dumped ammo and there's trash. How do you manage all of those inputs and manage your time to be an effective leader as a field grade?
Yes.
Yes.
It is the proverbial knife fight in a phone booth every single day, because the 3 shop is like the 5-meter target factory, right? And the recipient. I mean, they pop up all day long. So I'd recommend, this kind of goes to self, but you have to get some quiet time for yourself. You have to, because everybody needs it. And your field grade time isn't necessarily the time for you to be making long intellectual strides. It's not the time to, anyway. This is the time to be hooking and jabbing for the unit, right? But you still need your quiet time so that you can understand, you can see the unit from a different perspective, right? I promise you, from 0600 until whenever you leave the office, in every unit that I've ever seen, you will not get the ability to do deep work on your own. You won't get half an hour of quiet time that you can sink into a task unless you are incredibly deliberate about it. So you need that time. For me, it was the morning, coming at 4:30 or 5, and was just able to process some things. I was able to prioritize what I was going to do for that day, set out what I was going to do, remind myself of intentions that I had, things, and then we roll into this, 06 with the boss, and but there will be a surge period. There should be a surge period in the beginning, and you can tell your spouse is this, and but I think it's good for you to get in and spend a lot of time and energy really up front to understand the unit, because the quicker you can understand and get to systems like you were talking about, then you can the better you can get those things righted and off in the right direction. If your boss promotes getting out of the office at a decent time and promotes apportioning time appropriately between work and home, then get on board with that and make the 3 shop or the staff adhere to it. I mean, be the executor for that. Don't make him walk around and say, "Hey guys, get out of here." You got to figure it out. So I'm going to try to be that person who try to set those conditions. Iron major years, you do have to just plow through them. But if your boss, if that's important to your boss, it's got to be important to you too. And down at Fort Hood, General Milley was the boss at the core level, and he said 1,500 on Friday or on Thursdays was the family time, and by God, he was driving around kicking people out of headquarters, and we're like, "Roger out, I got it, I got the intent and the specified task." So if your battalion commander says that, be the one that can execute it and does. You'll hear that it's in the commander role. I think that statement is more relevant, but as a 3 and an XO, you really have to you have to be the extreme prioritizer. You've got to set out limits to how much you will dive into each topic. You've got to cut off good ideas at the "Hey sir, comma, I got a great idea. Oh, hold on, we're not going there." You really do. You have to even coach in company commanders on their brilliant ideas, right? If they're going off in left field on something that's not productive, get them back in line. Because the thing that kills us are all the good ideas that we think help the soldier or help the unit, even from outside the organization. There's lots of good programs out there, right? But just because it's a good idea doesn't mean it has to be a good idea in your formation. And so you've got to be the gatekeeper for that. You've got to protect it passionately. Otherwise, you won't see your kids. You won't see your wife at night. You really won't. And so I recommend strict limits on meetings, on how much you're going to spend, how much time you're going to spend, and tell them exactly. Tell your staff and everyone how much time we're going to dedicate to this, and have that agenda set out, and then be ruthless about it. And the second or third time that company commanders get cut off in a meeting because they were bloviating or they were going off on some tangent, they'll figure it out. Hey, this meeting's ending in 15 minutes. We're walking out of here, And I bet if you set that culture, even if your boss, even if that wasn't his idea initially, he would jump on board with it. And you tell him behind closed doors, "Hey, sir, I'm gonna protect everybody's time. This meeting's stopping in an hour. Okay, Roger out. You know, do read aheads, whatever you need to do. I've been in a unit that does read aheads, and people get their info ahead of time, and it's all packaged right there. Meetings are not designed. Good meetings are not designed to distribute information. We've got email for that, right? Good meetings are the ones where you come in, you take a look at relevant input, and you make a decision. Good meetings point to a decision, right? So, you know, ask yourself how much in the training meeting can you get done ahead of time and kick out an email, and then you're just simply back briefing, having the commander's dialogue inside the training meeting, and then coordinating maybe a couple things here and there based on the commander's interaction. But it just takes discipline, though. You know, why are the slides? Why is it always up to the last minute that we're either printing off slides or sending out slides? Well, the reason is because the deadline was up to the last minute. If you make the deadline 48 hours beforehand, then you're not going to be rushing to get the slides in because that's when the deadline is. You know, so those kind of time management things are important for the formation. But if you're right here, you can't see it. So get back, come in early. You know, set out a few rules and intentions ahead of time and dedicate yourself to it. You know, I don't know. What have you guys had? What kind of time management practices have you guys found effective?
I did the come in early in the morning and then just look at all the tasks I had just written in my green book for the day prior, and then I just typed them all out on a Word document and I just started slashing through them. And
Yeah.
but I think it's a lot easier to do as a company commander because I can each one of those tasks I could conceivably put personal attention to, whereas as a major you've got to coordinate with 3 different people who all have a list of tasks for the unit, so I think it's a lot more difficult to sort of compile those and keep track of them.
Yeah.
I know where I just came from, they had, in addition to the training meeting, they had an XO to XO meeting where they would, some of the details that didn't necessarily need to be decided upon in a training meeting, those were discussed in that battalion XO to company XO meeting.
Yeah.
And that's where you figured out how all the classes of supply were going to arrive at the place they were supposed to go to for XYZ training event.
Right.
I thought that was efficient, but the downside of that is I never attended them because I didn't have to as a company commander, and so I think it didn't always get the audience that it should have.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
it did cut down on the length of time of a battalion training meeting.
Yeah. Brian, have you ever had a boss do time management right?
I think being a bulldog on the meeting time, sir, is really what it came down to. We would, if we had an S3 as an S3 sync, you know, hey, we're going to be in here for 30 minutes. We're going to go over this task tracker, and then we're going to be pushing out of here, just like you mentioned earlier, sir. That was very helpful to get him to his things and get us focusing on our tasks as well.
Right.
I'm just going to hop right back onto the systems management approach to this, and a lot of us have talked about meetings, and that's always a huge thing that sucks your time. Surprise, not all of the meetings that you're going to go to as a 3 or an XO are yours. You're going to be up at certainly at the brigade level and sometimes at the division level, sitting in a meeting that is not your meeting and working through being a good team player for the brigade 3 or brigade XO. But the Colonel Stedman's points on getting the info out are spot on early, and then also a clear understanding of what the purpose of the meeting is. You know, what is the input, which we've stated.
Yeah.
What is the output? It's the boss's decision on these 4 things and a discussion on this one thing. And as long as people know that going in, you'll do pretty well. Or is it a working group and we're going to huddle around a whiteboard and we have 2 or 3 topics that we don't want to make a decision on? We want to gain understanding as a staff. We want to build understanding as a staff, or between the staff and the XOs, the commanders, or whatever. And then we're going to do a subsequent meeting to inform the boss. So the more you can delineate what you're trying to get out of the meeting, people will come prepared, and they'll often go a lot faster for you.
Yeah. Right now, I'm sketching out exactly how I want to run digital engagements, like on the weekends. So I've committed not to send emails unless it's something critical on the weekend. But like receiving emails, even looking at them, that kind of thing. So if you set the culture that after 1700 on Friday, it's not getting to me, I won't answer it. If you want me, call me. You know, that can be powerful. You know, because I do not want people working on the weekends. Don't. We can do it. Like we we can do it in the time that we have. In fact, we expect you, because as a professional, we expect you to have to be a competent professional at work, and then be what you need to be at home for your spouse, or for whatever whatever your personal situation is. We expect you to do both, and so we expect you to be efficient enough during the workday that you have enough energy and time left over, and really cognitive coherence left over to devote to the spouse. That's important. And on that note, there's going to be time away, because it's a busy time. It is, so far, it has been the busiest time of my career. So, you do what you can to figure it out, but you also can make up for it in other ways, right? So honestly, like, you buy more flowers, send more notes, make sure to get date night going on the weekend or whatever. But you do those active things to show that it's a tough time, but darn it, you appreciate what the family is sacrificing.
All right, well, we're hitting the time mark here, and this has been a really, really awesome conversation. So I'm gonna close this one out. Is there any closing comments, anything you'd like to put out to the team, either here or out distributed?
Well, I'll tell you, it can be a whirlwind, but I'll remind you what a couple folks in our various sites and have mentioned, and it's really good advice. Is that don't forget that staff is a leadership position too. Not just as the major, but as the captain, as a lieutenant. Every day in the Army is a leadership day. And sometimes you have to be forceful about making time. Sometimes you just have to look for teachable moments. And just look for a moment where you can say, hey, I got a lesson on that. Or ask somebody, even if you just ask somebody how their day's going, or kind of what they're thinking about their future service. Even if it's a 5-minute conversation, that makes an impact that's outside of 5-meter target land. And so just try to remember that as you continue to sprint for the organization, because it matters. That kind of stuff matters. That human element in developing people still matters when you're on staff.
Great points. So great discussion today. Appreciate you guys here in the room participating, and then the folks that are out watching as well. Appreciate your participation. So really, I think the key things that I've highlighted that are things that resonate with me in my experience were that bit of humility in learning, understanding, and knowing that you don't have the answer, and then that transition, your mind frame from kind of a doer of things to an organizational leader that's focused on systems. Those were the two kind of big nuggets for me. So for you guys that are out there distributed, this conversation, it certainly isn't over. So I put in a couple of things down in the comments. Number one, if you didn't know, Colonel Stedman runs a very small and kind of minuscule site. No, just kidding. It's a large site that's called the Military Leader. So I put in his information on Facebook, on Twitter, and also the URL to his website. So the conversation is there. I also put in my information for this forum, the Field Grade Leader, on Facebook, on Twitter as well. So please continue to engage. If you like this video, share the content. If you're interested in the conversation, post comments, and we'll continue to do forums similar to this over the next coming weeks, months, years, whatever. And then also I'll continue to write short posts. I do a forum in the morning, kind of a coffee huddle forum, if you will, and I'll talk through some comments there, and then I'll also continue to write articles and post some professional stuff from out in the business world as well. So thanks for joining us today, and that wraps it up.